we're trapped in a closet with New Trek and we don't want it.
That is a joke. I get it.
Hi guys, Geezer64 here, and today we're talking about Picard Season 2, Episode 8, titled Mercy. And at this point, I'm saying Mercy, I'm just done. I'm kind of done with New Trek at this point. I'm going to preface this video with the thing I prefaced in the last few videos, which is this. I'm a longtime Star Trek fan. I love Star Trek. I've loved it since I was a kid. I don't like current Star Trek. I don't like New Trek. I think it's not Star Trek on multiple fundamental levels. I don't think it's honest to Gene Roddenberry's vision, and I think it has it has terrible writing. It has terrible writing.
I don't think that's a little harsh. I think that's the truth.
And that terrible writing is on full display here in Season 2 of Picard. Now, the reason why I preface with this is because I do know people who do like current Star Trek, and that's fine. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong. Your opinion is just as valuable as mine or anybody else's. And the reason why I'm prefacing with this is because I don't want to take away your enjoyment. I want to be upfront with you guys where I'm coming from in this review. So with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into the review. So the episode opens up and there's a kid running through the woods, and I immediately am like, is this another young Picard flashback? Please, no more young Picard flashbacks. I hated that side plot. I hated that this was handled in the last episode. It's like, good. The best thing about last episode meant we weren't going to get any more young Picard flashbacks, and thankfully this is not young Picard. It's another kid, so that's good. Then we cut to Picard and young Gainen, who are in a closet, and really this should be the episode title. It should be titled "Trapped in a Closet." That's what this episode should be titled, because you're going to spend the entire time of this episode in this stupid closet, basically. Anyway, the FBI agent who arrested them at the end of the last episode is questioning them, and he basically accuses them of being aliens and threatens them. So Rafi is talking to Rios over the communicator, and apparently, you know, obviously what we all know, which is that the Borg Queen infected the ship and is now taken over the transporter as well as other parts of the ship. They've been very inconsistent with covering what parts of the ship work or what parts of the ship don't. It's been the only consistency in the way the ship functions is the inconsistent way in which the writers don't properly explain what's working and what isn't working on the ship, what the Borg Queen has control over and what she doesn't. But in this instance, she's taking control of the transporter, and so Rios is relaying that to Rafi. And then Rafi is giving Rios commands like do X, Y, and Z, and I'm just like, what are you talking about, Rafi? Rios outranks you. Rios is a captain. You are a lieutenant commander, okay? This would be like Data telling Picard what to do on Star Trek TNG. It's just weird. That's one thing that's happened with New Trek is there's basically no chain of command or people who are lower on the chain of command, like badmouth, the captain to their face. That happened in Discovery too.
I'm going. Get off my ass. Sir, get off my ass, sir!
This is not the first chance that I've given current Trek, by the way. I watched the first season of Discovery, I watched the first season of Picard, and this is the third chance that I'm giving it to watch another season of New Trek. And all the things I've seen pretty consistently is that the chain of command is consistently broken. It's like the writers just give whatever dialogue to whatever character is most convenient to deliver at the time, regardless of the chain of command. So young Gainen is basically throwing him back on the FBI agent and saying that he looks like the overworked, personally obsessed guy, which is accurate. I don't mind this at all. This is consistent with Gainen's character to read people, but the only problem I kind of had with it was the way Gainen comes across is she never came across as condescending. She inquisitive and interested, in the people that she's talking to, and that's what got people to open up to her. This just comes across more as condescending a little bit. And kind of arrogant, just the way that she's reading what kind of person he is. So that's the only part I didn't like. It's very subtle, but it is important to the character. So then we cut back to Soong and the daughter, which there was a reveal 2 episodes ago that Soong's daughter is an experiment of some sort, having to do with his eugenics experiments. And, we didn't really care, or at least I didn't care. A lot of people didn't really care. Why? Because you didn't build up to it. You introduced her in the previous episode. She was in a couple scenes, and then she got this big reveal, which we were supposed to care about, but we don't care because we don't really know anything about these characters. So it's not really a big deal, but she puts on this Oculus and Q shows up as a program and is basically explaining some things. And she acts really shocked that she's an experiment. She's like, oh, I'm an experiment. This is really shocking revelation. When she realized that at the end of episode 6, she was like, oh, she saw all of the footage and saw that she was an experiment. So why is she just now acting shocked? Like, she should have already figured that out at this point. I think it just comes down to writers of this episode not really talking to writers of the other episodes, or it could just be that they're the same writers and they just don't even know what they're doing. I don't know which one it is, but whatever the case, it doesn't really make sense because she already had this revelation in episode 6. Then we cut back to Seven and Rafi, and they're trying to hunt down the Borg Queen. By the way, I don't think that I mentioned that, but it is what it is. And Seven yells at Rafi, and I'm fine with this. She says that Rafi manipulates people. And yes, of course she does. Rafi is one of the worst characters. I'd say she is the worst character in Picard. The worst! She's condescending, manipulative. She takes no ownership of her actions. She's extremely selfish, and she blames everyone else for, like, any situation she gets in. She blames other people for it. She blamed Picard for him in the first season, and then blamed Picard in this season for the reason Elnor died. So I don't really have a problem with Seven yelling at Rafi. A matter of fact, if Seven yelled at Rafi every episode, I'd be fine with it. Anyway, Seven and Rafi do actually find the Borg Queen Girardi, and she kicks their butt and then runs away. There was a throwaway line that Rios threw out there whenever he was captured by ice in episode 4. By the way, episode 4 is still the worst episode of the season. I don't see it being topped at this point. Hopefully not. Hopefully we don't know anything worse than episode 4. But in episode 4, when Rios is captured by ice, he has a throwaway line about the fact that he's from the future and he's a ship and all of this stuff. Like, he just throws it out at this ice agent for whatever reason. And it's supposed to be kind of a joke, but apparently that comes back into play, which I can't believe they actually maintain this continuity between episodes. Like, I'm surprised the writers are even capable of doing that at this point. Regardless, he has Rios's quote and throws it at Picard and's like, hey, are you, we know that there's something going on here. Then we cut back to Rios on the ship, and he's talking to the clinic lady, which she teleported to the ship for some random reason. It doesn't even make any sense why he would do that. Like, the temporal prime directive, screw that, who cares? It doesn't matter at this point. But regardless, the clinic lady and him are on the ship, and her kid's also on the ship. And I will say that their dialogue at least feels mostly natural for the most part. Like, I feel like this is really a credit, I think, to the two actors more so than the dialogue. But regardless, theirs is the only relationship that kind of feels somewhat realistic or organic in any kind of way. So props to those actors for that's for sure. So Q finally shows up from the summoning that Gainen did, and he's a FBI agent, so he's let into the separate room because Gainen's been put in a separate room. Q shows up and they have this little conversation back and forth, and we get a reveal that we already knew, which was that Q was losing his powers or dying or something to that effect. We already knew that was the case, but it's supposed to be some kind of direct reveal, but we already know, so it's not really a big reveal at all. I guess the only reveal is like Q's thoughts on the fact that this is happening to him, because he basically talks about, hey, well, I sensed my own death or some kind of way, and I thought I was on the verge of some kind of further evolution or the unknowable, which Q are all knowable. So, being able to, have something out there that's unknowable, he was excited for at first, but then he just sensed nothingness, like he was just disappearing and nothing that he ever did mattered in any kind of way. I think this whole idea would be interesting if they kind of tied it back to the Q episode in Voyager where one of the Q wanted to die, and then that obviously sent reverberations through the continuum, and we saw kind of how that impacted some things in the continuum. But I don't think the writers are capable of tying these two things together in any significant way. I'm hard pressed to think that the writers even have seen all of the episodes of Star Trek. So Q says, I'm not the one who sent them into the past, which is true. I mean, Picard and the crew traveled to the past of their own volition, but Q is the one who seemingly saved them from the explosion of the Stargazer and plopped them into the fake mirror universe, this rip-off mirror universe, and they went back in time to save, their own future. So Q's obviously the one who did that, and if he isn't the one who did that, then it's just a coincidence that he happened to show up. It makes you wonder who did that, and why would they specifically pick these specific people, Picard and his crew? Because here's the thing, is I don't think they're going to explain it. I don't. Here's how I would explain it. The episode, season 1 and season 2 all happened in Picard's head.
Damn it, I'm not stupid!
That's how I would just explain that away and then start season 3 fresh with the TNG crew. So Q basically says, hey, I'm trying to help Picard to give my life meaning, but I don't really understand that. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But then again, like, his motivations still are not clear. There's 2 episodes left, and his motivations still aren't clear. We're under the assumption that he wants to stop Renee from making her launch, but we don't really know why. He's messing with Soong for some reason to accomplish that, but we don't really know why. What is he trying to accomplish? That's basically the extent that we know, because Q's hardly been in this season, even though he's been hyped to be in this season. We get some drama between Soong and Soong's daughter, who has taken the permanent cure from Q, from the Q program, and you know, there's supposed to, like, there's this big drama between the two of them, whether Soong actually cares about his daughter or the experiment, or what he cares about more. And, you know, the audience pretty much suspects what that is, and Soong's daughter does as well. And she ends up leaving, but ultimately it's just kind of drama that's fairly pointless because, again, we don't have any connection to these characters. Then it cuts back to Seven and Rafi, and they're talking about the fact that the Borg Queen is eating car batteries in order to create nanoprobes so she can assimilate people. And I'm just like, this is crazy. I mentioned this before, the last episode, and I think the episode before this as well, both episodes. This whole, it's assimilation with extra steps. Like, the whole thing is just to stretch out what's happening with the Borg Queen by not giving her the ability to assimilate people. It doesn't really make any sense as far as how we know the Borg to function, so whatever. It's just assimilation with extra steps. Then we get a Rafi flashback to her convincing Elnor to join Starfleet. And she said, I'll just say that this is some bad dialogue here. She says to Elnor,
you and Honor get a new thing.
And he responds with,
you undercutting anything real with nihilistic and self-protecting humor, get a new thing.
And I'm just like, I can't believe this dialogue was written. I can't believe this was written and delivered and put on screen and then sent out to the audience. It's kind of crazy. Anyway, the whole point of this is that we get the fact that Rafi emotionally manipulated Elnor into joining Starfleet. So then Seven and Rafi are using the cell phone that the Borg Queen was using, and they're looking through the search history, and apparently the Borg Queen's looking for Soong, and this is another dumb delivery line here. Rafi says,
what could she be looking for there?
And Seven says,
whatever she needs.
What could she be looking for there? And then another character, whatever she needs. How redundant is that? If you're looking for something, it's obviously something that you need or want. It doesn't make any sense. So then young Gainen uses made-up powers that the writers just gave her to utilize to relay a message to Picard that something Q said, which is all humans are stuck in the past, in order for Picard to use this information to convince the FBI agent, figure out what's going on with this FBI agent. So the man flashes back, and it's him as a kid, and it's just like I guessed immediately which was the kid at the opening of the episode is the FBI agent. Apparently he came across the Vulcans in the woods, and the Vulcans basically are following the kid through the woods because he happened to come across them, and then one of the Vulcans mind melds with him to erase his memory, and then he gets beamed away. I had several problems with this specific section because there's lots of blatant continuity problems, at least from my perspective, and I'd be curious about your feedback here. So the Vulcans were back on Earth in the 50s. They were sent, there was a small survey vessel to scan Sputnik, and the ship crashes and they end up on Earth. But they were never supposed to land on the planet. They ended up crashing. So they weren't sent there to actually land on the planet. They were just supposed to do orbital scans, and that's it. This FBI agent's in his late 50s, early 60s or something like that. So that would put him a kid in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, maybe something like that, if I'm doing my math correctly. So that's like 15 years or so after the Vulcan crash landed in the Enterprise episode. So just keep that in mind. Then one of the Vulcans mind melds with the kid, as I said, and we know based on the Enterprise series that it was a very small subset of Vulcans that mind melded, and it's not socially acceptable at all. You can be kicked out of the science program if you're mind melding with people. So based on that timeline, it doesn't make any sense that a Vulcan would mind meld with somebody if it's in the 1970s or early 1970s. Like, that doesn't make any sense, because like less than 1% of the population mind melds, and you can be kicked out of the Vulcan science program if you're caught doing it. And he does it right in front of somebody else. And I believe at that point, the Vulcans only have mind melded with other Vulcans. So again, that doesn't really make sense with continuity at all. And then he gets transported away mid mind meld with this kid. And that would severely mess up this kid. Like, he would have severe psychological damage if they were in mid mind meld when this Vulcan is being pulled away, which they seem to say that's what happened. And that's the reason his memories were not erased. So that's a big problem there. And then the other problem is the fact that the Vulcans have transporter technology. Now, I'm not 100% sure on this. I'm fairly positive, but not 100% sure on this. But it's been shown that Vulcans didn't have transporter technology at this point because, again, in that Enterprise episode, they don't beam the Vulcans away when they come to get rescued. They actually have to land a ship outside for them to go to and be taken away. There's no demonstration of teleporter technology in First Contact. When the Vulcans land and meet the humans, they land a giant ship in the middle of Montana when they could have just beamed down and met them. You could argue it's for theatrical purposes, but I don't think they had transporters at that time, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And we know a human developed a transporter, and I think that was the first person in that sphere, like as far as the Vulcans, humans, to create the transport. Not that other alien races didn't have transporters, they obviously did, but I think the humans created the transporter as far as in the Vulcans-humans alliance. I'm pretty sure humans created it. It could just be another Vulcan technology that they withheld from the humans because that happened, but I don't know. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm fairly positive they didn't have transporter technology. But anyway, there's a lot of problems here. The fact that Vulcans are on Earth, like in person, scanning stuff, doesn't really line up with what we saw in that episode Carbon Creek. I don't really think they'd send like personal surveys down with like real people, and the fact that they wouldn't scan the area to make sure there's nobody around just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It would have made more sense if they just changed it from the Vulcans to some other alien race. But anyway, I just wanted to go off on a tangent for a second because I feel like this is another one of those continuity ignored type of situations, but I'm curious as to what you guys think. So then Picard basically explains to the FBI agent that, hey, they were Vulcans, and does the mind meld thing with his face to show him, hey, this is what they were doing, and they were trying to help you. They weren't trying to hurt you, in order to enlist the FBI agent's help. And I was fine with this. This kind of feels like something that might happen in Star Trek. I didn't have any problem with this at all. So Gainen gets brought in, and she's having a conversation with Picard, and she says something that I think is also Star Trek related, because she's specifically referring to humanity. And I'll just tell you what the quote was. She says, well, when something inside you is broken, it stays with you. You live in the past until you're able to reconcile it, even if it's painful. You do the work because you want to evolve. I almost forgot how unique that is in the galaxy. And I feel like that's Star Trek right there. Like, considering all the dumb dialogue they've written in here, I feel like, hey, this is something that actually feels a little bit like Star Trek. Because Star Trek, one of the fundamentals of Star Trek is about the betterment of humanity, the evolving of humanity outside of our selfish nature, and that kind of thing, and the traits of humanity that differentiate us from other cultures in the galaxy that have propelled us faster. That's important to Star Trek, and this line kind of actually talks about that a little bit. And like I said, I'm kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised they wrote this. I didn't know that they were capable of writing anything like this, because most of the dialogue is terrible, and the story and pacing and writing and everything else here is terrible. But hey, a bright spot. I'm gonna give him props where I can. But anyway, the FBI agent was bluffing with some of the things that he said. He ends up getting fired and then letting Picard and Gainen go. So the Borg Queen Girardi does show up at Sung's place, and she basically convinces him to help her by appealing to his narcissistic attitude. And I'm not really sure why, because something happens later that kind of doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Because right after this, Sung assembles a bunch of mercenaries to help her take over the ship. So they're going to go take over the ship that she already has control over the transporters. And so I guess she's going to transport all these mercenaries to the ship in the next episode, and there's going to be a big shootout, I guess, maybe. I'm assuming that's what they're setting up for. But the reason it doesn't make any sense is that she immediately starts assimilating the mercenaries. Why would she not just assimilate soon? Like, if she assimilated him, then she would have all of his knowledge, and then she'd be able to call these mercenaries and do everything herself. So it doesn't really make any sense. And another dumb dialogue alert, by the way. She says,
"Who's in the mood to add a little of their biological and technological distinctiveness to our own?"
Who's in the mood? Really?
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Some of this dialogue is like written by like 8-year-olds. I can't believe that they wrote this and delivered this and then sent it out to the public. I'm not going to say I straight up hated this episode because there really wasn't much to dislike. There's some continuity issues, but really this is just a pointless episode. Like, nothing happened here. All the information that the characters learn in this episode is stuff the audience already knew, and some of the characters already knew. Like, the fact Q's dying, we already knew that. Soong's daughter being an experiment, she's somehow acting shocked about that, even though it's completely obvious that she already figured this out in the 6th episode, and along with us, we already know this. Girardi being the Borg Queen, they talk about it, and the fact that she's slowly assimilating Girardi, and Girardi might still be in there. All this stuff we already know. The fact that she's trying to get nanoprobes to assimilate other people, like all this stuff we kind of already guessed because she hasn't assimilated anybody, so we figured there was some kind of dumb reason for it. Rafi being manipulative, yeah, we already know that. We already know Rafi's a terrible person. All of the stuff that they figure out in this episode is stuff we already knew. This whole episode is just people being trapped in a closet. It's Gainen, the FBI agent, and Picard trapped in a closet. That's the majority of the episode. And anytime it's not trapped in a literal closet, you're trapped in a figurative closet where it's them in the ship, where it's Rios and the clinic lady and the kid in the ship. And then trapped on sidewalks of LA, because that's the only other place you really get. With Seven and Rafi's walking around the sidewalks of LA where nobody seems to be around for some reason. I still say they screwed up continuity in regards to the Vulcans and where the Vulcans were technologically, and the fact that he was mind melding with, I know for sure the mind melding thing is something that you could probably argue that maybe they had transporters, but the fact that he's mind melding with a kid, I'm about 100% sure that shouldn't have happened at all. The fact that Vulcans are in person on Earth and they didn't scan anything to make sure there weren't people around, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense either. And ultimately it doesn't really matter, because unless the FBI agent comes back into play in this story, he didn't do anything. Like, this setup would have been interesting if this character played a part and appeared in multiple episodes. This being his backstory could have been kind of interesting. If this was his backstory and they kind of solve it, and this episode played out how it did, assuming it played out earlier in the season, you know, around episode 4 or something like that, where you set up, hey, there's an FBI agent in current day who's, you know, helping us, just like the clinic lady was helping him. You know, that could be interesting. So unless he comes back into play, it's fairly pointless. And I don't suspect he will, because he's been fired from his job, so I don't know how much help he's going to provide. And the fact that they're going to go, the Borg Queen's going to go attack the ship, which is in France. So I don't know how he's going to be useful there either. So with him not coming back into play, this entire episode was pointless. Q said something in the episode I think is pretty apt here, which is, he said it's about the escape, not the trap. And honestly, I feel like that's kind of the writer's mindset here. It's and this is also why a lot of people don't like this mystery box, like, BS. Like, we don't like it. The mystery box storytelling is played out at this point. We all know it. Overall, like, this season is just a complete and utter mess. It is a stretched out plot that should have been 3 to 4 episodes that they stretched out into 10. And just like I said here, this is just an episode of being trapped in the closet. And that's how all the audience feels at this point. Like, we're trapped in a closet with New Trek and we don't want it.
That is a joke. I get it.
But regardless, what do you guys think? Did you guys watch this episode? Did you like this episode? Did you dislike this episode? Was there anything that I didn't talk about here that you guys noticed? Very curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because a lot of you guys have some pretty good comments. And on a positive note, I will say this. I picked up this from the used bookstore, Star Trek Q Squared, written by Peter David. There was somebody who commented, I think in my last video, that Peter David was a good Star Trek author, and I came across that at my used bookstore. Never read it, don't know anything about it, so after Picard is over, I'm probably going to give this a read to see some good Star Trek in a novel. So yeah, good news about Star Trek. But anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. We got 2 episodes left, guys. We're going to do them together. Thank you, subscribers. You guys are awesome. Welcome new subscribers. Hope you like what you've seen so far. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a bigger. I'm Geechu64, and I'll always tell you the truth.